So there's something in self-determination where we say is with freedom comes responsibility. So with the freedom to be able to choose your own supports and services comes more responsibility because you're using taxpayer dollars, right? So you have to, so the number one thing is that you have to go through an orientation, what I'm calling an initial informational meeting. So each regional center is going to be having an informational meeting. Or many, I'm hoping many informational meetings, because it's not like you have to be there at one time, and if you can't be there, your kid can't be in self-determination. But there will be multiple informational meetings in multiple languages, hopefully, in your regional center, and you go to it and you will find out exactly what, you're going to hear a similar presentation of what you're hearing tonight, and if you decide, yes, this is the right thing for your family, then you will fill out a form. It's not like a form saying, I want self-determination because, it's just, you're just submitting your name. Then your name goes up to DDS, and that's how they make the choice. But you have to go through this orientation. If you end up getting selected in the initial phase-in, or if it's after the 3 years, for anybody who just signs up, you're automatically in once you sign up. After 3 years, you must go through a training. And each regional center is going to do training their own way, but it could be multiple days of trainings, because you're spending on your own a lot of money. I mean, you have a fiscal manager there, which I'll talk about, but you are responsible for sometimes, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you're going to need to develop a person-centered plan, which I'll explain in a moment. You have to select the individuals and groups to help you implement the plan. All of this is going to get explained. You will choose a fiscal manager to monitor your budget. You will oversee the staff and agencies. This is really important. You will hire them. And if you don't like them, you can fire them. You don't have to go to your regional center and say, I don't really like this agency, and they're going, why not? You have to put that in writing, and then maybe 3 months later they might consider giving you a different agency. Or, as in some regional centers do, they say, well, if you don't like it, you can sit at home. Because we only use one day program provider. And you have to ensure that you don't overspend your budget. Okay, so let's get started. So person-centered planning is the core of self-determination. Do you want to go, I know you haven't even seen this PowerPoint, do you want to talk a little bit, because she's led a lot of person-centered plans.
When it comes to person-centered planning, we know that regional center claim that every plan, every IPP is a person-centered plan, and that they have extensive, their service will have extensive training, but the ones that I have read, they were not. So maybe there's some truly great ones that I have not read. So what we like to start that with inviting all the stakeholders. So that's people who are intimately involved in a person's life, and then we ask the person to let us know who they are. So it's person-driven, person-centered to begin with, and then we start. It could be a lengthy process, could be several hours, and usually we break it up in several parts. And my role is listening, taking detailed notes, and there's also groups who do that, right, professionally.
Yes, so you can lead your own person-centered plan, or you can hire a facilitator to lead your plan.
So independent facilitators, I am trained in person-centered planning, but there's trainers of trainers who will be willing to come out, but that would be out of the self-determination budget.
Right.
But many families find that that's well worthwhile, because that's what drives the whole plan, is having a good plan to begin with.
So let me talk about some of the values of person-centered planning, because it's really important, is that in the process, regardless of how impacted by their disability the individual is, you have to presume competence. You have to presume that they can plan, they know what they want to do in their future, and they can build a meaningful life. And if you don't go into a person-centered plan presuming competence, then you shouldn't be having it, you shouldn't be in self-determination, because that is the core of it. Secondly, it's the behavior is communication. So some people say, well, my child's nonverbal. How is it that they're going to be the center of their plan? Well, every behavior is communication. Example, somebody had a person-centered plan in Michigan. This story was told at our conference. That she was leading the person-centered plan, a woman who was the speaker, and she had gentleman came in who was the center of the plan, and he had not personally invited everybody in that room. Sometimes the provider invited some people, the parents invited some people, and this one person came in the room, he went berserk and he peed on the wall. That was communication. He doesn't like that person. They shouldn't be part of his planning process, and they probably shouldn't be providing services to him either. So there are ways to, if a person is having significant behaviors in certain settings, that is the communication that is not something that they like to do, or there's something about that setting that is bothering them. So, we all put people into these boxes. Well, of course, because they're so impacted by their disability, they need to go to a day program every day. Maybe they hate it. Maybe that's why they're having all those behaviors. So we have to presume that everything they do is communication. We have to respect the cultural diversity. And that is really important in the state of California. Because if you have a Latino immigrant who is very concerned, yes? I'm sorry. If you have a Latino immigrant who is very concerned about certain people coming into their home to work with their child, you can't just sit there and go, oh, you can't at the plan say, oh, well, you could go to this place and this place, or maybe they don't, maybe you have an individual who doesn't have transportation, then, asking them to, oh, well, the best program is all the way in the valley and you live in South Central, you can't ask them to do that. You have to create programs that are going to work for them and that meet their cultural needs. Maintaining health and safety throughout their lifetime, knowing that people have different needs as they age, and that health needs to be a very significant part of a person's plan, and that people should be able to choose where they live and whom they live with. So this is a key thing. So what kind of services can you get through self-determination? So if you go on the DDS website, which is dds.ca.gov, and I'll have it up at the very end, you will see under our application, if you go under self-determination, you will see under the application for the state that we list about 20 pages of services that you could choose. 20 pages. Now, you know how you said regional centers don't give you all the information? We're giving you all the information.
Where is this 20
pages? This is dds.ca.gov. It's actually, there's this book that the Autism Society of LA put out for the conference that unfortunately you didn't get to go to, Elizabeth. But you can get a copy of this book for $15, which is all that it costs us to print. You can email, if you're interested in this book, by the way, let me give this to you. It's info@autismla.org. And it's a book called Self-Determination, Think Outside the Box. It has a copy of the self-determination law. And it has the 20 pages of services, and I mean, this is what they look like, and this goes on for 20 pages. And anything that you could possibly imagine would be in there. Yeah, absolutely. This is a key thing. This is the reason why a lot of people are going to choose self-determination. The providers do not need to be vendored. So when you call your regional center and you say, my child needs behavior therapy, my child needs let's say independent living services, you are given, if you're lucky, more than one, sometimes only one agency. Well, I'll just have the agency call you. They don't care if you like the agency, they don't care if they're effective or they get good outcomes. You can just have any agency. With this, you can have your next door neighbor provide services. If your child is, I'll give my son loves traveling. I have a friend who has a travel agency. I could take self-determination dollars and we could pay her to mentor my son so that he can learn a little bit about working in a travel agency. We could pay for the job coach for him to be there to handle any behaviors he might have, since she is not going to understand autism. So you could totally think outside the box, think very individually in the kinds of services you could provide, and you don't have to use a vendor. Another great story that I love is from the pilot. There's a family up in Mammoth who are the son has very, very significant, he's not, I don't know autism, he has very significant health needs. Very, very impacted by his disability. And he was 15 and he was using diapers when self-determination started. And the regional center was paying for the diapers, but the diapers would come in a giant box and they were really poor quality. And so when the son got into self-determination, they found out how much the regional center had been paying, and it actually cost more than Depends that you get at Costco. Significantly more. And the Depends are much higher quality. So he went and took his budget and started buying Depends, and now all of a sudden he's saving state money. So you're not using the vendored company, and who knows why they're using that company, what kind of kickbacks. I mean, who knows why they use some vendors, right? There's a lot of it's just based on personal preference, relationships. I mean, there are some agencies, I'm trying to be careful, I actually said more than I should because I'm on videotape, but there are certain agencies that have exclusive contracts with regional centers. Exclusive contracts to provide day programs or other kinds of adult services. And parents are told, if you don't like that agency, your kid can sit at home. So that goes out. This is a key thing. So you may remember that in 2009, the legislature passed a budget with all these cost-cutting measures in it for everybody, not just people with disabilities. And part of it was that they took away some of the services we normally would get, such as camp, social, recreational programs, swimming, horseback riding, all that stuff. That's all back on the table with self-determination. Okay? So obviously they have to have federal matching funds. However, you'll see in this book that's being passed around that federal matching funds are really extensive. Okay? Okay, so how do you come up with the dollar amounts? All right? So the dollar amounts, everybody in self-determination is going to get an individual budget. All right? How do we devise that individual budget? It's equal to the last 12 months of how much money the consumer has spent. Not how much the consumer has been authorized to spend, but how much they've actually spent. So let's say you've been authorized for a social skills program or for a behavioral program, and you haven't actually utilized it because you don't like the provider, you don't think it's appropriate, but you've been authorized. That's not going to be part of your budget. So I encourage parents that if you've been authorized services and there's a reason why you're not using it, figure out how to use it so that you have a budget. However, there is a way to change your budget. This amount can be changed if you show that there is a change in circumstances or need or prior needs that were unaddressed. So if you, let's say, were authorized for $20,000 worth of services and you only used $2,000, your budget starts at $2,000. But you make a pretty good case that your child actually needs $20,000 in a budget because that's how much they actually authorized. You just felt that the provider that they were offering you wasn't an appropriate provider. So I think that you have the best case to increase your budget looking at what was authorized versus what was spent. But what about those individuals who have a zero budget right now, who are getting nothing? So all of you are going to have to make a case that there's unaddressed needs, and that and that's where I think the Disability Rights California, the Office of Client Rights Advocates in your regional center are going to be helping to represent you a due process if you end up having to go to that, which I'm sure a lot of people will. And for the first 3 years, the reason why we're having a phase-in is because we're trying to figure that stuff out. Trying to figure out what do you do about those individuals who have a very small budget. And then there will be some people who have ridiculously huge budgets. Do you know what the developmental centers are? The institutions that still exist. There's about 1,100 people who still live in them. They can use self-determination to get out of the DC and go into the community, and their budget is about $435,000 per person. Not because they're actually getting that level of service, but it's because there's so few of them left that it's costing that much to keep them in there, which is why we're closing them down, right? Well, we're closing them down because we should close them down. People shouldn't be living in institutions anymore. But it's easier to make that case to show how much money it's going to cost. So your budget may be too small, your budget may be too large, but it is a negotiation you have with your regional center. So it's the same kind of struggle we've always had. Here's the little kicker here, is that if you hire an independent facilitator to help you with your person-centered planning and identifying services and support, that comes out of your budget. So people say, well, wait a second, my independent facilitator, I don't have one right now and we're gonna have the same budget. That is one of the things you're having to deal with. because to get this law passed, we had to make it cost neutral, so we couldn't increase it for that. You also have a fiscal manager, and that also comes out of your individual budget. So for some people who have kind of mild needs and have very tiny budgets and are going to have a hard time making a case, you know, it may not work for them. I also tell families, if you go to Westside Regional Center, you're getting a lot of the things you need. Do you need to go there? You know, if you're getting what you need, if you are happy with the way things are going for your child, you may not need to have self-determination. Okay, so people are required, you're not required to have an independent facilitator, but you are required to have a fiscal management service. They are the only people who are required to be vendors in this entire process, because they are the ones handling the money. So the way it works is you come up with a budget, and that budget is then approved by the regional center, just the dollar amount. The regional center can't say, I don't like the way you're spending your money. They can just say, this is the total amount that we agree to. And then that budget is then put in with your independent facilitator. You figure out kind of month by month, okay, they're going to go to camp in the summer, so maybe a little bit more in the summer, or they're going to, you know, here they're going to do this special program in October. So you kind of figure out a 12-month budget, and you give it to your fiscal manager, and you give them the address, the social security number of the people that they're supposed to pay, and they pay it on a regular basis. Things can change in your budget up to a small amount within certain categories, or you can change your provider. You can say, I didn't like this person. You call up your fiscal manager and say, I've hired a new person. It's fine. They're non-judgmental. They're accountants, basically. The other thing is that the Client's Rights Advocate, the Office of Client's Rights, the OCRA in each regional center they don't work for the regional center. They work for Disability Rights California. They're independent attorneys. They also sit on this committee, so they'll make sure they're following the law. There's also going to be a statewide advisory committee made up of all the people at the 21 regional centers that will someday meet, because when the 21 regional centers actually appoint theirs, and that at the end of this phase-in period, DDS is collecting data on how the program went, and that there will be a report to the legislature done by the university Centers for Excellence on Developmental Disabilities. So just finding out more, your next IPP, you don't have to wait. Put it in writing, just put everything in writing, okay? I just want to tell you I'm interested in being on the advisory committee in writing. I just want to tell you that I want to make sure I get invited to the orientation or you know, any informational meetings on it. Ask your regional center about things. Volunteer, we already said this. Here's the website for updates. You can actually get on a mailing list so that you get emailed when there are updates. You can join ASLA, it's email info@autismla.org if you want to buy this book, or if you also want to get on our website, or the Disability Rights of California. Both of them also have Facebook pages that you can like and be part of, and then really start thinking. Start thinking now so that you're not delaying. And also consider becoming an independent facilitator. And I will be sure to invite Judy and get it out of your mailing list when we have our training for independent facilitators.